Well, we're here at CPAC. It's Sunday, and I have the pleasure of talking to Dr. Ben Carson, who's become a friend. He is really a man of faith. He's a man of principle. He's a man of action, too. And so, welcome, Dr. Carson.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you, whether it's here or in Texas or in Wisconsin or wherever.
It is a pleasure. Hey, it's Sunday. It's the Lord's Day. Let's talk about hopeful things. Tell us the hopeful things from your perspective.
Well, I'll tell you what's really hopeful to me is I run into a lot of people who formerly were very discouraged, and they said there are a lot of bad things going on in our country. And now they're getting active. They're getting motivated to do things. And, you know, what we have to do, I think, as a nation is recognize our Judeo-Christian roots and how that foundation has given us what we need to fight any challenge that comes along. There's no question there is a challenge to our way of life in this country, to faith and to freedom and
Liberty,
to family,
right,
and to all of those values. There are things that are out there that are challenging that. But what does the Bible tell us? Just take as an example, the 1619 stuff and the critical race theory, which
right,
tells you that we have to base everything on race. What does the Bible say? And 1 Samuel 16:7, it says, "For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart."
That's right.
Okay? Because he knows that those superficial characteristics are just that, superficial characteristics. They don't mean anything. You know, my skin color, my hair texture, the shape of my nose means nothing. What means something is, what do I think? How am I programmed? What do I believe? That's what determines who I am as a person. And that's what that verse is saying. And that's what Dr. Martin Luther King meant when he said,
That's
I
right.
dream of a time when my children will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And really, when you think about it, doesn't that make a lot of sense? Because why would you judge somebody on the basis of something they have no control over?
Right.
Wouldn't it be better to think about those things that they can change, like their character and who they are? And, you know, when we stop and we allow the love of God into our hearts, there is no room to be canceling people, to be hating people,
Right.
to be calling people horrible names. You know, let's never get caught up in that. Let's not be vengeful. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And in fact, what does he say in Proverbs 25? He says, the way that you really get back at your enemy is you be nice to them.
Right.
Heap
Love 'em.
coals of fire on there.
Right.
Because they don't know what to do with that.
That's right. Well, you know, if you think about two societies, one that is going to judge solely based on outward appearance and one that's going to judge on the content of your character or looking on your heart, there's no question. The second one is going to be the more successful society.
Exactly.
It's going to be the happier place to live. It's going to be the better place for every participant in it. It will be a better and stronger society than one that's looking at superficial issues.
Question about that. And think about our children too. Do we want them to grow up in an environment where they're judging everybody on how they look? You know, that's what animals do. If you look at an animal brain, you'll see that the midbrain is very, very big and well developed, because that's the part of the brain that allows you to react quickly to things. Their frontal lobes are very small. Frontal lobes are where you do your intellectual processing. Human beings, on the other hand, have relatively small midbrains, but huge frontal lobes. Because instead of just reacting to what we see, we have the ability to process that information, to dive deeply into it, to figure out who a person is based on their character,
Right.
and not on what they look like. We don't need to act like animals.
No, and that if we're made in the image of God, that is a statement of what God is like, and of course His Word confirms that.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. So we're hopeful. We see a lot of excitement, people that are standing up and saying they would prefer liberty to tyranny. And it really is tyranny. I mean, I think about the 5-year-old little girl who happens to be white going to her first classroom in kindergarten being told that all of the problems of the world are her fault. How could they be her fault?
That's got to be very discouraging. And I encourage good people, logical people, and people who truly believe in our Judeo-Christian values to stand up. It's very easy to hide and to sit in the corner and hope that no one calls you a name. But how is that helping your child?
Right.
How is that helping your grandchildren, your children, and all the people who are coming after you? And what if the people who preceded us had done that? Where would we be?
Wow.
So, sometimes a bit of a sacrifice is required. But the way
And
I
a
look
risk,
at it,
because they might try and cancel you.
They might indeed. But let them, if they want to, let them persecute you, let them call you names. How long are we here? How long do we have to stand for that against the backdrop of eternity?
Very short, very small sacrifice compared to, and that's what God's asked us to do. He told us if we believed in him, that they would hate us like they hated him.
In the book of Matthew, he says that very clearly. But that doesn't mean that we can't support each other. It doesn't mean that we can't and shouldn't do everything we can to ameliorate the situation. We shouldn't just capitulate to it.
We respond to hate with love.
Exactly.
That's great. Well, tell us a little bit about the Little Patriots.
Oh, the Little Patriots! It's so much fun. It was Vladimir Lenin who said, "Give me your children for 4 years, and the seeds that I plant will never be uprooted." And that's true. And when you think about it, doesn't the Bible say the same thing? In Proverbs 22:6?
Train up a child.
Train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he'll not depart from it. Well, we also need to understand that. And that's what the Little Patriots, which is part of American Cornerstone, we are developing programs for the children that teach them the true history of our nation, teach them the meaning of our Declaration of Independence, which tells us that our rights come not from government, but from God. And our Constitution, which I think was an inspired document.
I believe that.
And all of the things that went into the making of this country, warts and all, we teach them with interactive lessons that are fun, holographic images that they can interact with. And these are obviously going to be good for the parents too.
Yes.
And they'll be good for homeschooling. They'll be good for charter schools, for private schools. And eventually they will make their way into the public schools because the demand will be great. People see what they're getting. And, I just think it's so vitally important that we combat what is happening with our children who are being told, first of all, that, they may be carrying some horrible disease. So they got to wear masks all the time. They can't see facial expressions. They may give some horrible disease to their grandmother and she dies. Well, unfortunately, grandmothers tend to die. And you didn't cause it, but you may be thinking that you did.
Right.
And then they're told if they're white that they're the source of all evil in our society and their ancestors caused all evil. If they're black, they're victims, hopelessly mired in a situation.
Nobody wins from that. Everybody's a loser in that.
It's craziness. And all of this while they're trying to develop a self-image. And then, if that's not enough, they're told you may not actually be a girl or a boy. Forget about your biology. Forget about science. It's how you feel. It was kind of funny. Candy and I were driving the other day, and we saw one of these big muscle pickup trucks with the double exhaust and everything. And on the back, it had a sign that said, "I identify as a Prius."
That is funny.
It's pretty funny. But, we simply have to be willing to stand up and talk about logic and common sense, because obviously that's been lost by many. And we need to help people become grounded again. And recognize that we, the American people, are not each other's enemies. Just because we have a different opinion of different people, or we have a different yard sign, that doesn't make us enemies.
No.
And we can get a lot more accomplished if we work together, if we recognize who our real enemies are. I frequently refer to the movie Independence Day,
Yes.
where the aliens were coming, and all of a sudden, the Palestinians and the Israelis were friends.
They all came together.
Yeah, you realize who your real enemies are.
You know, in that movie, though, one of the things I noticed is that a bunch of people were excited the aliens were here, and they were waving up to the spacecraft right up until the laser beam came and blew them all away.
Isn't that apropos?
It really is.
What's going on today? Yeah. So, we really have an opportunity, I think, right now, instead of being discouraged, to go out there and to fight for the things that made America into a great nation and that really provide freedom and justice for all.
That is a great message of hope. It's the message of America, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
And it's always good to be with you. I appreciate what you do for America.
Thank you, Dr. Carson.
Okay.
God bless you.